let's make an op art sphere. So optical illusions can make you feel like something is moving or happening in a work of art. In this picture, what do you think is going on here? Are all the squares the same size? Are all the lines curved or straight? So what's going on here is all of the lines are straight, all the squares are the same size, but the placement of the dots on the squares give the illusion that the image is warped. If you look at the black square in the very center, notice that there are 8 dots around it. On each corner there is 2, so that equals 8. But if you look at the other squares, they have less dots. The dots on the square in the center are putting emphasis on it, making it look like the image is curved slightly. So this is an example of an optical illusion. So what is op art? Op art is also known as optical art and was an art movement that became popular in the 1960s. It is often seen in black and white, but contrasting colors are used also. Op art is known to play tricks on your eyes through the careful planning of color, shapes, and lines. Op artists show movement like flashing patterns, warping or swelling, and hidden images in their art. Let's look at the work of one of the most famous op artists, Bridget Riley.
Bridget Riley burst onto the London art scene in the 1960s, and she focused solely on the contrast of black and white in order to fully explore the perceptual potential of her work, to disorienting but equally dazzling effect. One of Riley's most iconic works is Movement in Squares. Riley applied a visual disruption to the pattern, regularly diminishing the width of the squares. This idea of applying a visual disruption to a basic form, this alternating interplay of anxiety and composure, actually became the key principle which developed a lot of the works in this period. So in some other black and white works from this period, the close proximity of undulating lines actually give the appearance of vibrations on the canvas. Bridget is fulfilling her aim to make the space between the spectator and the picture plane become active. Her work often requires time for your eyes to settle into them and leave after images imprinted on your retina long after you're finished looking.
Now that we've learned about Bridget Riley, let's go over the directions for our op art sphere project. These are the directions for day 1. This project should take you 2 days. For your supplies, you'll need a piece of paper, a pencil, an eraser, a ruler, a circular object to trace, like a small plate, a bowl, a lid, 1 color of marker, and a white crayon or colored pencil. First, we'll start by tracing our circular object in the middle of our paper with pencil. Then we'll draw straight lines using our ruler with a pencil to make a checkerboard pattern around the circle. For this step, the lines don't go through the circle. Notice this picture here at the top. The lines are not going through the circle. After that, we'll draw curved lines inside of the circle to continue the checkerboard pattern. This will make the circle look like it's a 3D sphere. Notice the picture here at the bottom. The lines are arched slightly, giving it the illusion that it is curved. I'll go over all these steps soon in the video. Now for our directions for day 2. Start by planning where your color goes. You're going to choose 1 color and white for this project, so any color you like. Notice how in the picture here at the top, there are dashes with pencil in every other shape. That is telling me where the color goes. This will help you not make a mistake when you're coloring in. Also notice that shapes that are inside the sphere are warped. So if we look at this blue shape, it is not a perfect square, but it is all colored in. I will go over all these steps in the video if this is confusing for you. After coloring all the shapes in, we'll add a shadow by shading around the edge of your sphere with pencil. Then we'll shade with a white crayon or colored pencil in the center of the sphere to add a highlight and make it look 3D. When you're doing this, remember, op art takes careful planning, so please take your time and I promise it will look fabulous. Now let's go ahead and get started. So to get started, you will need a piece of paper, a pencil, an eraser, a ruler or something with a flat edge that you can use as a ruler, like a piece of paper, a book, anything that has a straight flat edge will be fine. You will need something that's a circle to trace. This is a lid to a container, a small plate or bowl. You want your object to be about the size of the palm of your hand or like a little bit bigger. Nothing too teeny tiny and not something that's going to take up the entire paper. Then you will need one color of a marker. This could be black or this could be a color. You will be using that color, for example, black, and the white of your paper for your checkerboard pattern. Then another thing that you will need is something white to add a highlight with. This could be a white crayon or a white colored pencil. So the first thing I'm going to do is trace my circular object. I'm going to put it in the middle of the paper. Yours could be off to the side a little bit if you want, but just make sure it's not cropped off the paper, that you're tracing the whole circle. So I'm going to use my pencil and trace around it. Then the next thing we need to do is make a checkerboard pattern around our circle. I'm going to use my ruler for this step, and I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. The first way is without measuring. So if you're not quite sure how to measure on your ruler, or if you just think this looks easier, you can use this method. I'm going to just put my ruler up against the edge of the paper and make a straight line at the other side of the ruler. Then, to make my next line, I'm going to line up the ruler where that first line was and make another line. I'm just using the width of the ruler to make my lines. Once I get to the circle, I'm not going to draw through the circle. I'm just going to stop right at the edge of the circle and continue my line below. So remember that your lines do not go through the circle. When I get to the edge and I have a little bit of extra space, notice how when I make this line, I have a very small section here. If that bothers you, you can cut it off or you can just leave it as is. Then I need to make the horizontal lines for my checkerboard pattern. I'm going to do the same idea here where I put my ruler at the edge of the paper and then I'm going to make a line across. Then I end up with a square shape. Now remember, I'm not going to draw through my circle. So I'm drawing my line and stopping at the circle. Here's another way to make the checkerboard pattern if you'd like to measure it. So let's say you have a really wide ruler or you'd really like your squares to be precise. You can measure it at the inch mark. So if you look at your ruler, you should have a 0 at the end and then you should see some other numbers in between. Maybe my ruler doesn't have them, but where you see the big number, so 1, 2, 3, that is your inch mark. Also, the longest line on the ruler will be where the inch mark is. So I'm going to line up the ruler at the edge of the paper here at the top. I'm leaving a little space so I can write on my paper. I'm also making sure that the 0 is at the edge of the paper, not the ruler, but where the 0 mark is. Then I'm going to just put a little dash mark right above the big number or where the inch mark is. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't need to make one at the end because I know this is where 12 would be, right at the edge of the paper. Let's do the same thing below. So I'm going to line up the ruler where the 0 mark is at the edge of the paper, and 12 is on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't need to make these dashes too dark because I really only need them for me to see. Now I'm going to connect those with a line. So let's line up the ruler with those tally marks and make a line across. This method takes a little bit more patience and time, but it will look more precise. So whichever one makes most sense for you, you should do. You don't have to do it this way. Remember that you should stop at the circle. Do not draw your line through the circle. Awesome. Now I have my vertical lines of my checkerboard pattern drawn. We need to do the other side now. So I made tally marks across. Now I'm going to turn my paper and make them on the shorter sides. So line up your ruler where the 0 mark matches the edge of the paper. This side of my paper is 9 inches, I can tell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be at the edge. Then let's make the same tally marks towards the end of the paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now we need to connect them. So I'm lining up my ruler, holding it in place, and making a line across. Now remember that you're going to stop at the circle and not draw your lines through the circle. Stop and continue. Now we need to draw our lines through the circle, but we're trying to make this circle look like a sphere or a 3D circle. We're going to give the illusion that this is a flat surface where the checkerboard is, and that the sphere is coming off of the paper so that it's slightly rounded. To do that, we need to draw arches like rainbows or like smiles, and we need to draw some curves that go towards the left and go towards the right. We're going to look at where the lines that we drew for the checkerboard background stop at the circle. So on the left side, we're going to draw lines that curve towards the left. So notice that this line is not straight, but it curves. And I'm connecting it where this line stops at the circle, and then I'm arching my line a little bit and connecting it on the other side. So here's another one. This one's going to be a little bit bigger, and it connects there. Sometimes you might need to do this more than once and perfect your arch. Now, this one goes right through the middle, so I'm actually going to make this a straight line, and I think I'll use my ruler for that. You might not have a line that goes through the middle. Yours could look like this, where there's no line that goes through the middle. I actually only have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. If you have an even number of lines like this, you will not have one in the middle. But if you have an odd number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I will have a middle line. So then once I'm on the other side, my arches are going to curve towards the right. And then this one will curve also towards the right. Now I need to draw the lines that go across. Notice how some are arched like rainbows, so they arch up, and some arch down. So near the top, they're going to curve up, and near the bottom, they're going to curve down. If I look at the horizontal lines that stop at the circle, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This one does not stop. It almost touches my circle line, and this one doesn't. So I only have 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first two are going to curve up. The bottom two are going to curve below. So let's do the first one and connect. Then the second one. Now the bottom two are going to curve downwards. Notice that it's just a slight curve. And it gives the illusion already that our circle is round and not flat. Now that our checkerboard pattern is drawn and the curved lines are drawn inside the sphere, let's plan where the colors will go. So you should pick one color and white for this project. Your squares will be a color and white. So you're gonna make a pattern with that color. So I'm going to put a mark with my pencil in every other square. So this will be a color, this will be white. So if I put a mark in it, that means that I will end up coloring it in. The reason that I'm using a pencil for this is because if I make a mistake, then I can go back and erase it. If I did this with the color, then it would be harder to correct that mistake. Notice when I start a new row that the square above it is the opposite color. So this square would be black, then this square would be white. I'm not repeating the same pattern here because then I will just end up with black, white, black, white, and I want it to alternate. When you get to a square that has the sphere in it, this whole thing is a shape. So I'm going to outline it a little more here for you to understand. This is like a distorted square because it has the sphere touching it. So this will all be colored in. That's why I made a mark there. This will all be white. This will all be colored in. White, colored in. White, colored in. So here I have color, then this will be white. So color, white, color, and then this is part of that square, so it will be colored in. Color, white, color, this little part is colored in, and then this is white. So it does take some planning for this step. That's why it's really important to do this in pencil, just so that you can make sure it's all correct before you go ahead and add that color. So this whole area is white, this part and this part. This will be color, this will be white, this will be color. If you're ever unsure, just look at what is above it. I saw that above this, I marked it to be colored, so I know right below it will be white. So here I have white, this would be colored in. Color, white, white, colored. White, white, colored. White, colored. White, and color this whole part. Once you've planned out where your color goes, here's how we're going to color them in. So let's say I wanted to use blue as my color. I'm going to go ahead and outline the squares or shapes that are colors. Then I will just fill in that shape. Now I can go ahead and do that below. I'm just going to outline the shape. I'm just looking for the squares that have pencil marks in them. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill those in. I'm going to leave the others white. When you color in, it's good to color in one direction. That way your coloring looks as neat as it can. And make sure that you outline it first and then fill it in. That way your edges look super neat. So I'm going to outline the edges and fill in using one direction. So I'm making a line with my marker. So when I get to a shape that is overlapping onto the sphere, it's really important to outline the entire shape and really look at where that shape starts and ends. So I'm looking at the lines that go through to make that shape. So I notice that this curves a little bit. This is a little bit distorted because we're making our circle have the illusion that it is round, even though we're using a flat piece of paper. So I'm going to color in that entire square, even though that doesn't look like a real square like that. So again, let's look at that one more time. I'm going to outline this distorted square because it overlaps on the sphere. The corner is just a little funny looking. Here's a square that's inside of the sphere, and it's not a typical square shape. It has some curved edges. So I'm following those curves when I'm outlining. Then I'm going to fill in the shape. For this example, I'm going to use black and white, which is a very traditional optical illusion color scheme. Just to go over the shapes in the sphere, you're going to look for the ones that have the tally mark inside that you marked to be colored. Then go ahead and give that shape an outline. So you're going to outline the edge and look at where it goes on to the sphere. So it starts to get slightly warped and distorted, and it doesn't look like a perfect square. If it's helpful for you, go ahead and do the outlining first, or you can fill it in as you go. So I'm carefully outlining the shapes that go where the sphere are. Remember to go with the curve of the lines. The more you go with the distorted shape, the more your illusion will make sense. So then when I go to color these in, I'm just going to color right over the original circle line in the squares that will be black. If you're using a really light color like yellow or orange or pink, I would go ahead and erase the tally mark right before you color it in, because you'll be able to see it through. So it's a good idea to do that if you're using a light color, but blue or black or purple, red, a dark green, you'll probably be fine with that pencil mark. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and speed up this process and do this in fast motion. Colored in all of my squares, I'm going to add some shading around the sphere to make it look more three-dimensional. So this is going to add to our optical illusion. You will need your pencil and your white crayon or colored pencil for this. First, I'm going to go ahead and outline the line that the circle was originally. So go through and find those pencil lines that are not outlined yet. And I'm doing this in black because my color was black, but you should do this in whatever color you chose and just make a thin outline. We don't want it to be super thick, just a thin outline to show where that circle is. All right, so I just did that in the sections that were white because I don't need to do that in the black sections because you can't see the line anyway. Now I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to do a little bit of shading on the edge of that line. And this is just in the white sections. To do shading, you're going to kind of go back and forth with your pencil and make a little bit of a thick line. Not super thick, but not just one pencil line. Then with your finger, you're going to blend that out. And that's going to make a shadow, or it's going to give the illusion of depth there so that it looks like the sphere is popping off the page. If you feel like you don't have enough, you can always go back and add more. If you feel like you did too much, then you can erase it. That's why it's good that we're using just a regular pencil for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that in all of the sections that are white along the edge of the circle. And blend with your finger. So I'm going back and forth with my pencil. I'm not just doing a line. That wouldn't be enough of the graphite or the lead of the pencil to blend. We want it to be as dark at the edge of the circle and gradually getting to be a lighter value and blending into the white of the paper. Even do this a little bit on the inside of the sphere. So just along that edge where the paper is white, if you just do a little bit of shading with your pencil and then blend it out with your finger, it will add even more to your optical illusion. And I'm really just doing this right at the edge. Here's a closer look. Last step of this is using your white colored pencil or crayon. You're going to find the center of your sphere. Mine is about right here, and we're going to make a highlight in the center. It can kind of go off to one side or the other. Just don't color in the whole area. So I'm going to color very lightly with my colored pencil, or you can use a crayon for this step, and just make that colored section, so that in this case mine is black, a little bit lighter. This is giving the illusion that this is a highlight where the light is hitting the sphere because it is round. So I'm doing just a little bit of very light shading. I don't need to do this in the white section because it's white and I wouldn't be able to see it anyway, but it's important to do it over the colored section. And I do want to gradually let it fade out and show the black. I don't want to color it really dark, just enough to make it give the illusion that it is round. So I'm just going back and forth over this just to get it to be nice and light in the center of this area. And I'm barely pressing down with my pencil because I want to gradually add the white. I'm not pressing really hard at first because I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to want. So I'm just lightly pressing down with my pencil.
Okay, so we are all done now with our op art sphere. I hope you had fun using the careful planning of shapes, lines, and colors to create your very own optical illusion. I can't wait to see what you create. Have fun, artists!